This is the UC Hunting Properties Podcast, your home for all things recreational land. Our goal, to help you stand on your investment. Hey guys, welcome back to the UC Hunting Properties Podcast. Today's episode is going to be a special one, and I always say we have a special guest. I think this is going to be a special episode. With us or joining us in studio is Chris McDonald. Chris is one of the agents out of Wisconsin, works with the Josh Gens team. What I would argue some of the best deer country in Wisconsin. Chris is right there. He kind of lives right in the backyard of Matthews Archery, being in that Sparta area. Chris was very, very fortunate last year to draw, I don't know what it is percentage-wise, and we'll get into that, but he drew one of the coveted elk tags for Wisconsin where they reintroduced elk a while back. So Chris is with us today, and he's going to walk us through that whole epic story and how things went down. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, man. You and I have had a chance to, I guess I would say, hang out multiple times, for mostly business stuff. And I know some of your background, but I guess I don't have an in-depth understanding. And the way I understand it, it's very interesting. You're a very decorated and accomplished bow hunter. Give our viewers and listeners a little background on who Chris McDonald is.
Yeah, so I grew up in the suburbs of the Twin Cities. I was a suburb kid, really into sports, kind of let sports take me everywhere. My hunting was confined to northern Wisconsin, my grandfather's on the weekends, and it wasn't a whole lot. I went to college, and I ended up at Winona State for a little stint there, and met some guys from northeast Iowa here.
Okay.
And I tell you what, them boys went from taking hunting from a like to a passion.
Sure.
And I cut my teeth with them, learned really how to hunt.
Yep.
And I've been able to turn that into somewhat of a career. I worked in corrections for over 30 years.
Okay.
But I always thought of that as my means to go hunt.
Sure.
Yeah. So
I know the feeling.
Yeah. So you read in my generation, we read like Peterson's bow hunting and stuff, and I loved the passion for adventure, and I saw bow hunting as a real opportunity to see the world.
Sure.
And hunt at the same time, and boy, them articles stirred a passion in me, and I just tried to live that life. I did what I had to do to do these hunts. I started a business taking bow hunters all over the world. That was kind of unique and led
now,
to
when you say you started
opportunities.
a business taking bow hunters all over the world, elaborate on that, because that's intriguing, if nothing else.
So one thing that I found, like most in North America here, outfitters, they have X amount of tags. They sold them. Tags are hard to draw. Well, overseas, these outfitters have hunts. They don't necessarily sell a tag, right?
Sure.
So they want to have hunters and people help them market. And I saw a niche. I'm like, well, I can help you set up for bow hunters to be successful in Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and I'll bring bow hunters over to you if we can make this success, so they're successful doing it.
Yeah.
And it ended up being great. There was a 10-year period prior to 2008 that I was able to bring people, like I said, throughout the world. I've been to Africa 22 times, but every time was bringing a group of bow hunters over there.
That's badass.
Yeah. And that, I kind of promised my wife that I wouldn't take a lot of money out of our home. So, home economy.
Sure.
So I did that. I made a little bit of money, and I turned most of that money back into hunting.
Nice. So you were doing that at the same time you were in a, professional capacity in the real world.
Yeah. Yep. I was working at a prison in Black River Falls. I was able to trade shifts and, do what I could. We had enough vacation stuff, work for the state,
Sure.
But, I was able to do all these, 2 or 3 times a year. I was going to Africa. I've ended up hunting Argentina, New Zealand a few times, Australia a few times, Europe once or twice. So it was.
So you've been all over.
I have. I look back at, now as I'm getting a little older, I'm like, boy, I had a lot of opportunity, a lot of fun. And it was all
cool. Yeah. A lot of good memories, I'm sure.
Yeah. And It was, like I said, it's just been the adventure part for me,
Yep.
and I tell you what, there's challenges in life and like learning to, I mean, I went to places where they said, well, you can't hunt them with a bow. You have to use a rifle. I'm like, well, I don't hunt with a rifle.
Right.
I'll figure it out. And to help these people learn that it can be successful.
Sure.
And
arguably, in some cases, I'd argue the most lethal way to hunt an animal is with
Yes.
a bow. You
Yeah.
know, you don't have that shock and awe of a rifle going off, or
Yeah. Yep. And it's a matter of changing people's perception of the hunt, right? Like when I first got to Africa, a lot of them outfitters, their mindset was, I have to get you within 150 yards, right?
Yep.
Well, if you go over there with a bow, you got to get me to 20.
Right.
So it changed. I think once people you change their perception of what needs to happen to be successful, we're capable of doing it.
Absolutely.
So that's been the big part. Like I remember I brought double bull blinds over there for the first time to Africa.
Sure.
And these African guys were like, "You'll never kill anything with that. We brush all this stuff in. It's so complicated." The one animal they said they would never get within 200 yards of was a baboon because of how
Okay.
smart they were, right? So this is the first day, the first morning, and I got my double bull blind, and this outfitter says, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "We'll just pop it up in the middle of this field.
Sure.
I'll be fine." And he's like, "Oh, you can't do that. You won't." So they let me do it. They popped me up in the middle of this field, and they left.
Yeah.
And to find out that instead of watching me or staying with, they just thought, well, he's not going to kill a thing.
Sure.
Half hour later, I killed a baboon and it's laying out there dead. The whole troop came in. They literally just walked by me,
Out
never
of
even
curiosity,
looked.
or
They didn't even look.
No
They didn't
kidding.
even look at the blinds.
So it was similar. I mean, and not that this is anywhere comparable, Chris, but it reminds me of, I'd killed a lot of turkeys with a gun growing up, and I remember thinking the first time I was going to bow hunt them, one of my good buddies was like, "Dude, you got to pop a blind up, like, in the hayfield or whatever." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "You're just going to erect this random tent, get in, and expect a wild animal that lives there just to come in?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "It doesn't even faze him." And I'm like, "Bullshit." Sure enough, the next morning, popped a blind up, killed a turkey.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me if, their perception of the baboon was like, they're brilliant, they're, as close to humans as you're going to get probably.
Yeah.
And yet clearly it didn't faze them.
No, not a bit. So that was my first trip over to Africa, and I had been working with this outfitter to try to learn bow hunting.
Sure.
Well, that was eye-opening right there first morning. So then they were wanting to know what the capabilities of these blinds were, and having people in these blinds, and so we were hunting different species, and I think that first trip over there, I think I killed like 10, 12 different trophy quality animals in a 10-day time period.
Did it seem like they weren't leery to it? Like
Not
it wasn't
at all.
foreign to them? Didn't even faze them?
No, not a one. I mean, it's the same principles, right? You get the wind right.
Yeah.
You make sure that they're not seeing you or hearing you, and you can be effective with a bow. And I think that a rifle hunter that doesn't think about getting in that close doesn't realize, that just being hidden or
Right.
and
Concealed.
and also inanimate objects, how animals don't affect them. I mean, how many times have we talked about parking a car somewhere and having white-tailed deer walk right by them? They don't care.
Or walk up and literally lick the mirror or something, crazy.
Yeah, so that was a concept over in Africa. So just to fast forward that, I would bring 2 to 3. I figured out how to package them up and stuff, and that was back in the early days of double bull, right?
Sure.
So I was getting them from Keith and Brooks up in, and then I would take them over there. I was taking 2, 3, 4 at a time, luggage limit.
Sure.
I never left with a double bull blind.
They were staying.
They were staying.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Them guys saw effective tools, and
What a cool concept, though. I mean, something that, I don't know. I mean, I would argue we probably even take it for granted at this point, and you brought it there and introduced it, and ta-da.
Yeah. I like I said, I look back now, and as time goes on, you forget all the things that happened. But I had outfitters then, like I would stay in Africa. I'd bring a group over there, and then I would stay and go to a couple of different outfitters that would be friends of friends over there, right? And they would have me help them set their properties up for bow hunting, because they were finding out, for one, the people were just as successful, right? Most people go over there, they want to shoot 4 to 6 trophy animals in
Sure.
a 10-day time period, right?
Sure.
Well, if they could do it with a bow,
Even better.
yeah, it was less impact on their land. They weren't running the animals around.
Right.
Same concepts as here. You want to keep the animals on your property.
Yep.
I was getting them to slowly transition over into the bow hunting and how successful they could be there. I think a lot of these outfitters heard how bow hunting worked, but they hadn't seen the success of it.
Sure.
But I learned a lot over there too. I learned as far as like food plots and all that we talk about, water being key, like hunting over water.
Yeah.
And you take that back here, like I rarely set early season that I'm not over water.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, especially at that time of the year, water is probably more important than food.
Yeah. Yep. And you learn that it was all fun for me. Like if you targeted a certain animal, they all have their certain characteristics.
For sure.
And you had to do that to all put it. It wasn't just drive out in the field, glass one from the back of the truck and blast one in.
Yeah.
And a lot of these outfitters, that's all they had done, these PHs, professional hunters. And I think they started to enjoy certain ones, and they loved the concept of bow hunting.
One, I'm not saying this is going to probably come off a little wrong, but like hunting's hunting, and I'm going to support, basically any means. I'm not anti-crossbow, but I'm not pro-crossbow, right? And same thing with rifle. I'm not anti-rifle, but I'm not pro-rifle either.
Yeah.
I'm somewhere in the middle. And I think there's a big difference between playing a game of getting close and how far you can shoot.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate the how far I can shoot game. Like, I think that's badass when guys are, taking animals at 1,100 yards and stuff. But to me, that's shooting. That's barely hunting.
Yeah. And we could talk about like the progression of my life has been that.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately I look at a game as a challenge, like hunting as a challenge. And
clearly.
Yeah. And to me, it's a personal choice. Like I struggled early with thinking that a rifle hunter was doing the equivalent of what I was doing with a bow. But now as I get older, I like that's their choice. If that's what and I'm all about it. Just like experience and adventure of the hunt I really love, and we all have to decide how we want to have that adventure, and I've chose bow hunting, and it's been a struggle, but I don't look down on people for their choices, right? Because some of it's really, really hard, and I don't expect.
And at the end of the day, we got to stick together. I mean, hunters are hunters, and we're a very small minority of the population, so we got to support each other. But I mean, bow hunting will always be in my DNA, and I think you're hitting on something, Chris, I think it's just that added element of challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what it boils down to.
And it also takes into account, like, people, like life gets in the way, kids, games, just life gets in the way. And I will tell you that I couldn't expect many people to do what I've done because, I've taken, my dad is a diehard rifle hunter, never took me bow hunting a day in his life.
Sure.
He's like, he always asks me, like, what if you don't get one? Like that always has worried him on all these trips I've ever taken. And I'm like, it's never set in my mindset. If I don't get one, I'm okay with that, because I'm going to have this adventure.
Well, and it's that old saying. It's probably one of my favorite sayings is, I don't hunt to kill. I kill to have hunted.
Yes.
And to your point, it's just a different mindset.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I want to kill on every trip too.
Me too. Yeah, but I want to do it on my terms. And if I don't, am I going to be able to get back on that plane or back in that car and go home and be okay with it? Yeah, I've been okay.
We've all been there. Yeah. If you've bow hunted enough, you're going to have those trips. Like, it's just inevitable. Now, Chris, I was going to ask you. So, 22 trips to Africa. Obviously, you've piled up a lot of animals. Is there one that sticks out in your mind as like kind of your crown jewel hunt or best memory from all those trips?
Yeah, I guess getting to be like, I got to be friends with quite a few professional hunters over there and stuff.
Sure.
And I got an opportunity to do, like I said, I'm the guy that did it on the least budget you've ever seen, right? But I got an opportunity to do a problem animal elephant hunt.
Oh, wow.
And I chose to do it with a bow. And I'm a kind of a guy that will dive into what it's going to take to be successful, right? And I actually talked to Chuck Adams.
Okay.
The Ashby broadheads, I talked to Dr. Ashby.
Yep.
I did all this research to find out, and I had people actually tell me that it wasn't ethical to do an elephant with a bow, which weighed on me because I did. And I had 2 friends over there that are professional.
Shit, their ribs alone are,
yeah.
I mean, like armor.
Well, when I got to dissect an elephant, so there was 17 inches of meat between the skin, which was over 2 inches thick, and the first rib.
Wow.
So you're talking, 20 inches before you got
before you're
to
even
vital.
in the goodies.
Yes. Yeah. It was, like I said, it took a lot of homework and a lot of understanding what I was going to need to be lethal. I wanted to be lethal, and I had 2 friends over there that agreed to take me on this hunt. They they helped me with the research, but both of them in the end, they had both been on over 20 bow hunts for an elephant, and they had never not had to stick a bullet in it.
Really?
Yeah, and that weighed on me. I was lucky enough to
now was that, sorry Chris, not
Nope.
to dis but I'm curious because that's a big number.
Yeah.
Was it out of necessity from like a safety perspective, or like now the animal's wounded, we're putting it down? Like
I think all of the above.
All of the above,
I
okay.
think they had some mock charge situations. I think a lot of times that arrow was not performing when it got there.
Yeah.
So they had to put a bullet in it, whether it be mock charging them or that animal's not going to die right away, or, the arrow just didn't get into where it needed to get into. I think they had a lot of them issues. I talked to a lot of them. I mean, they were my friends, so I talked a lot about what I need to have happen. Well, I was lucky enough to do it. I did it in 2009, and in that time frame, it's what did they call the aluminum carbon mixed arrows?
Oh, ACCs?
Yeah, so they came out with a big game arrow. I think it was 19.2. I got it at home.
Sure.
But I think it was like 19.2 grains per inch.
Oh, so you're talking, I mean, that's like throwing rerod at them. Yeah.
Well, then Three Rivers Archery made inserts for the arrows that were 8 grains per inch as well.
Wow.
And then Ashby had just
so
designed
you're taking, so I got to make sure I'm wrapping my brain around this, Chris. You're taking an ACC, and for a listener that doesn't know, that is literally an aluminum arrow then wrapped in carbon, in essence. And, of course, they're hollow. So now you're telling me that you're going to take an insert that clearly fits, inside the shaft of the arrow to add even more weight.
Yeah, 8 grains per inch. It's a plastic tube like a straw.
Okay.
So they designed that. And the one thing I found with the heavy weight, I needed to glue that in. So I glued that in.
Makes sense.
Muzzy at the time made a copper insert. That I can't remember if I used the 50 grain ones or the 100 grain ones. And then the broadhead was 300 grains on the front. And
so total arrow weight 1,000 plus.
1,100.
Yeah.
1,100. I was right in there. And at the time I was working with the guys at Elite Archery, and they built a bow for me that was 95 pounds. And it's kind of a funny story with that. So you get it, 95 pounds.
That's unbelievable.
I could barely pull it. I kind of had to work up to it. Well, I got to the point where I was like, oh, I can shoot this thing. And I remember going to lacrosse archery. The hunt took place in the spring, March, I think I was over there. So it was winter here. I went to lacrosse archery, and I shot like 40 times. And at 30 yards, I was laying him in a 1-inch dot. I'm like, I'm
just
there,
hammering.
Yeah.
This
was a week before I went. So I waited 2 days, and I was like, I'm going to go shoot that. I couldn't pull the bow back. 2 days later,
funny.
I was like, uh-oh. So my doctor is a friend of mine. My shoulder was killing me.
Sure.
And I called him up, and he's like, come into the office. And he's like, I would never do this for another person. But he shot me up with cortisone.
Sure.
Yeah, just so I could be able to pull that bow back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Knock down some of that inflammation. And
yeah.
Now, did you ever run it through a chronograph or anything just to truly understand like how fast that arrow was moving out of that 95-pound bow? Because you're, and I mean, I'm just saying, like you're an average-sized dude, Chris.
Yeah.
So like you probably have a 29 or 30-inch draw length or something.
28 and a half.
Or 20. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So we're not talking like you don't naturally have a 32-inch draw that
No.
already gives you a huge advantage, but 1,100 grain arrow, I mean, that is insane.
Yeah, it was, and I've got some more stories on that end of it too. But anyway, so I don't remember particularly, but I think I know I did run it through a chronograph. I'm that type of guy, but
Right.
I think I was in the 220s or 215
Sure.
top somewhere in
Which
there.
is still bringing it.
Yeah, yeah. But the one thing I remember is like I got over there and the PH is like, my buddies, and they're like, well, let's see you shoot that thing, that arrow. And
I'd rather not.
yeah, I didn't want to shoot it much, but I remember backing out to 50. And they're like, you can hit the block from here. And, I had a block target.
Sure.
I'm like, no, I can hit that dot on that block target. Like, I should be better than hitting that block target.
Right.
And so I laid 2 in there at 50. But I just recall looking at the
Sure.
the arrow, they said it had to be going like 5 feet above the target and coming down to
I'm
it at
sure.
that distance or more. And,
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we're going to get you within, way closer than that. So
That's sweet.
yeah,
So anyway, you got your badass 95-pound bow.
yeah.
You got some crazy custom arrows. Give us an abbreviated version of that hunt, but
Basically, we got on. So these were problem animals. They were animals that were coming in and raiding crops. That
Sure.
In fact, they had killed one of the villagers.
wow.
And it was a group of young bulls that were coming in. Well, I shouldn't say young bulls; they were older bulls, bachelor bulls.
Sure.
And they killed. So these tribes, villages would get permits for these animals, but they have no means of killing them.
Should have no way to kill them, probably. Right?
Yeah, so my outfitter would buy the hunt from them, buy the tag, bring in the outfitter. They benefited both ways. They got all the meat of the elephant.
Yep.
They got the elephant gone, and somebody got to sell a hunt.
Absolutely.
So it works out great. And people talk about elephants. Like elephants, it's like elk. Are elk endangered in Colorado? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe in Wisconsin we need to limit the tags, but in Colorado you don't. Same way with
Yeah.
elephants. You look in that Zimbabwe has a lot of elephants and their problems. So anyways, a short story of that hunt is 2 or 3 different times I got mock charged by it. I mean, we're talking inside of 10, 12 yards.
Oh my God.
And we're following these elephants through. It was fully full of. It was like regular forests in Kentucky, big trees, leaves on, and we finally found 3 bulls that were sleeping. They were basically standing. You could see they're swaying. And I remember my friends. They let me go ahead, and my buddy filmed this. And they told me, when you shoot, do not move a muscle. Like, just be as quiet as you can, because if you shoot one, they're going to turn and charge at it.
Oh, sure.
And they were so worried about that. And then where they had to stay, they weren't sure that they would be able to back me with a rifle. Now, thinking back on it, I'm like, how stupid was I? But at the time, I rolled up there, and I got to a spot, and I was on my knees, and I remember the elephant was like rocking, and as it rocked completely broadside, I could see in its armpit was like a spider web of creases. And I'm like, man, that's the spot.
Sure.
And I pulled full draw, no problem on my knees. The adrenaline's flowing a little bit.
Yeah.
I could hear my buddy, the cameraman, breathing like hard, and I was like, I was in the moment. So I look back on it, and it didn't rattle me, but it probably should have.
Sure.
I let that arrow go, and I had a lighted knock on it, and the arrow just disappeared. It's gone.
Just buried.
Just
it.
gone. Yeah, and the thing whirled right away, flared its ears out, and it was just staring. And I guess it's like a moose. They can't really see that great. It's more about movement and stuff. That's why them guys were so. And it flared and stared, and then turned and ran off. With the 3 elephants take off in basically a jungle or forest. But the 2 guys come over and they're like, "What happened? Did you miss?" I'm like, "No, it went right where." Well, we didn't see the arrow sticking out. I was like, "It went right in." They were like, "No way." I'm like, "Yeah."
You blew right through them, didn't you?
I did. So we found the arrow on the other side, and it was a 2-blade broadhead, and we found a couple spots of blood, and them guys were like in disbelief. They're like, "Where'd it go through?" And they saw it. They just couldn't believe it.
Right.
You know.
I mean, and rightly so.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm like, well, that's what's supposed to happen.
Absolutely.
You know? They kept saying, well, it's never happened, you know. So, long story short, we tracked it for about a mile. It was
shit.
Yeah, it was you think about it, it was a 2-blade broadhead. It's an Ashby head, so I think it's only like
could be more than 1.125 or
yeah,
something cutting.
Yeah, long 3-to-1, you know. So we finally found it, and it was funny when we found it. It died upright. It died, you know, so it was upright. It wasn't on its side. It was upright. But the problem was the other 2 bulls were with it. And so we get up there, and it's not just me.
He just put the picture up behind you, Chris. Not
to
interrupt you, but look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And it wasn't just me and the 2 PHs. We're talking about I had to have a government official there. I had to have a tribe official. I mean, there was like 8 people with me that were tracking this thing. We finally get up to it, and my 2 buddies are arguing for a half hour that they could see the 2 bulls standing there. They couldn't see a 3rd bull, but they couldn't. They were too scared to go in and scare them off.
Sure.
So they didn't know what to do. They couldn't figure. So we were there half hour, and I'm like, "What's going on?" They were talking Afrikaans, so you know, finally they're like, "Come on!" So we went all the way around and the other side, and they went in and spooked off the other bulls, and my bull, because it had died upright, they couldn't.
That is so weird to me that it died. Like, do you think it just like crouched there? And
yeah, if you saw that picture,
I mean, that's how you found him.
Yeah, he went down like that because you can't move an elephant. You can't pose him for a picture. That's how he died.
Better than that.
No, and it's pretty rare that happens. And I learned some things with this.
So cool.
So an elephant. So that where his head is, that's as far down as an elephant's head can go. They can't reach the ground to drink or to eat or anything. That's it.
Hence the fact they have the long snout on them, right?
Yeah. That, you know, I would again, without the adventure of going there. That's something about an elephant I would have never known.
Know, right?
Yeah.
Who would know?
Yeah.
That is an unbelievable animal.
Yeah, and it's kind of so if you do go, if somebody wants to go on YouTube and they put my name, you know, with the elephant penetration test, it still comes up there.
That's super badass.
We shot into that with that setup that I had, and we got 3 pass-throughs with it. Like, so it changed the game for bow hunting over there.
So you cracked the code.
Yeah, basically, and I've, you know, we're looking at almost 15 years since then, and I probably field 2 or 3 phone calls a year of people wanting me to walk through like what it took to do that. You know, like if people book an elephant hunt over there, these outfitters are contacting me.
When I think back even through kind of like, you know, my acquaintance or friend group or whatever, and I know 2 other gentlemen that have taken elephants with archery equipment, but nothing like that. Like and this is going to sound a little crude. You know, their explanation to me was, dude, you walk up, you shoot it, you know, with your bow, and almost instantaneously the PH is, you know, putting a 560 or whatever through his, you know, skull or eye or whatever. You know what I mean? But yes, you shot it with a bow, whereas you did the real deal, dude. You sent one through the pump station, tracked it a mile, and that's hard for me to even wrap my head around. I mean, I get they're enormous animals and you're putting a relatively small hole in it, but that's what I was going to ask, Chris. Like, along the way, was it just profusely bleeding?
No. So it was just a slit. You think about that. There was a slit through that skin, was 2 to 3 inches thick.
Yeah.
And I will say that we found a spot of blood maybe every 100 yards or so, like a drop.
That's it.
But these, the another thing that I've gathered and got good at was the trackers over there. Everywhere I've been in Africa are phenomenal.
Next level.
Yeah, next level. And if I could, you know, like an elephant running through a forest, you'd say, well, you could track that, right? You could not tell. I mean, you couldn't tell where they went. It was unbelievable to me. And these guys, the ability to find where leaves were broke off.
Yeah.
Or like they'd find one track or half of a track, or they could see where they crossed rocks. I was just stunned. But they never were off the track, never. But they went very slow because they were very worried.
Very cautious.
Yes, yeah. like the of all the animals, and I've got an opportunity to hunt quite a few dangerous ones over there. The elephant was no joke.
Yeah.
They were very heavily armed with big calibers,
Oh, yeah.
and they weren't going to play around. But I was also very lucky that the professional hunters that I had, my buddies over there, are bow guys, and they knew how important it was for me not to put a bullet in this, unless I had to, right?
Yep.
And after what they saw, they weren't going to put a bullet in it.
Sure.
So it worked out pretty good. Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be interesting to know even statistically how many guys have effectively taken an elephant with archery equipment and, to your point, not, with no follow-up shot or, it just, I mean, who the hell, and the fact that you blew through him is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, that was to me as well. And, I don't think statistically there's been a lot.
Can't be.
No. And, I mean, call it luck. I like to think it's more than that. I guess I've always feel like I've had cautioned luck, right? I went over there really well prepared with what I was going to have to do. I've done that with everything. So we were talking about arching and, arcing heavy arrows, right? I had the opportunity a couple years before that to do a rhino hunt, but it was a darted hunt.
Sure.
And that one, I had to go with a vet, right? He was stunned because I had got my own syringes. I figured out I weighed out the fluid that would have to be in them. I matched that weight. I put them on arrows. You had to shoot with a 40-pound bow. So I had a lead at the time, made me a 40-pound bow because you couldn't crack their skin or anything. But
I suppose. I mean, that all makes sense.
The syringe on the end and the arrow weighed 1,500 grains out of a 40-pound bow. And
Unbelievable.
I would practice with that dart so I could hit a 2-inch dot at 40 and 50 yards. It was like shooting a basketball. It was kind of fun. And
how close did you get to the rhino?
40.
Okay.
40 yards.
So you were right on top of him too.
Yeah. Yep. And I did. That was a unique hunt because it was a dart, but you have to put it in large muscle group. They let me shoot it in the front shoulder. That was a hunt. That was hard to get that close within that,
Oh, I can believe that.
Yeah.
Chris, I was just thinking you're going to have to go Western hunt with us one of these years.
I would love to.
And the reason I say that, mostly for selfish reasons, I want to be in a truck with you for 15 hours and just let you tell us stories, about all these adventures.
Yeah, Colton Bettis, how good friends I am with him. I was telling him on the way down, like, I've had a lot of lucky adventures, a lot. And it's hard to be in this sport and come off and tell your story or like your adventures as just like entertainment.
Right.
Versus gloating or whatever. I've never wanted to be that guy. You hate to come off like I don't want to be.
Well, you're right. I mean, there's a fine line, right?
Yeah. But for entertainment purposes, I've been really lucky.
Dude, I'd love, like I said, you need to go with us one of these years just because I want to listen.
Yeah, well.
Or you should write a book or something, Chris. I mean, like I'd read it the instant it was published.
Yeah. I've been lucky.
No, it's super cool. I think you've been blessed. That's a cool deal. Now, let's get to the topic I really want to pick your brain about, Chris. So, in the intro, I'd mentioned you drew a very coveted tag in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Elk. I mean, I don't think most people. I think most people would associate Wisconsin with big whitetails. I mean, it's basically a national holiday when rifle season's on in Wisconsin. Or, as I like to say, there's really only two holidays if the Packers are on and deer season. But talk to us a little bit about, I mean, obviously there was a major push for reintroduction into some of these wild areas in Wisconsin with elk in general.
Yeah.
Kind of walk us through that. I mean, I know it's been a progression, and I know you know the whole background on it.
Yeah, we could get into a big, long discussion. But basically what happened was the legislature in the 90s, early 90s, mandated the state of Wisconsin reintroduce one of three species, elk, or moose, which there is moose there. They just make it better, or woodland caribou. So the DNR did a study and said that they were forced to bring in one of them, and the most feasible was going to be the reintroduction of elk.
Sure.
So it would have been in the early 90s, and I forget where the original herd came from. It might even been from some animals from Michigan, but I'm not sure. But anyways, they brought them in, and they put them in the Clam Lake area, which is in north central in the Chequamegon National Forest.
It's a gorgeous area.
It is. It is. Yeah, big forest, and they've, at the same time, the wolf population had come from Minnesota and started to expand. So they a lot of people attribute the lack of the growth of the herd to that. But I think there's several factors in that. But they've had a herd, and they were mandated when they got to a certain level to allow hunters. 6 years ago, they met that threshold. So we're talking from the mid to late 90s to 6 years ago would have been like 2018. I know everyone that they've brought in since then has been from Kentucky.
Okay.
So, and the genetics.
Well, that's a success story beyond belief too down there. So.
Yeah. It was on the hunt I ran into a vet for the state of Kentucky that was in on us, the Wisconsin trading. We actually traded rough grouse for the elk.
That's a hell of a trade.
Yeah.
I'd make that trade all day long.
That's what I was thinking. But he was a diehard grouse hunter. He was up to grouse hunter. It was just by chance I met him. But he was telling me the genetics of where they're. I mean, that area that Wisconsin got their last bulls from mostly went to the Jackson County herd. But they're talking several bulls that they're killing into the mid 400s.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, some good bulls. So they're gonna have some good genetics.
Well, it was funny because, and this is 20 years ago, but I was traveling for work, and my travels brought me through Kentucky, and I actually thought it was a joke, because I'm out in the backcountry driving. I don't even know, making a sales call somewhere. I don't even know why I was down there, and they actually had like moose crossing signs. And this was a thick, wild area, and I thought, what? Like I was oblivious. And then did a little research, and I'm like, I'll be damned, there's a huge herd here.
Yeah.
So I guess it makes sense if it worked in Kentucky. I don't know why it wouldn't in northern Wisconsin. I mean.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall exact numbers that he told me, but I want to say they were a little different as they brought in 2,000 elk from wherever to start their herd, right?
So they really pushed it.
Yeah, and I do believe that they're up to 15,000 for their herd. I think it's numbers like that, and I do believe that us from out of state are eligible to put in for hunts there. Yeah. So Kentucky's been a success, so that's where we've gotten our elk from lately. And as far as I know, the last of the reintroduction from another state has happened.
Yeah.
So now it's the one thing that my big takeaway from this hunt was about us in Wisconsin, what we want to do with this herd. It's going to stay about the numbers that are there now if we don't create some food and some habitat and stuff. And I don't know if you guys have heard stories. It's like Colton and I live, maybe 30 miles from the 30 miles from the Jackson County herd.
Yep.
2 years ago we had.
And that's kind of like Black River Falls.
Yep. Yeah. We had two bulls that basically summered right by us. So they spread in and out, right?
Sure.
I think they seek farm country, I mean,
why wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so unless if we in Wisconsin get some buy-in to let them come out into the private ground and, expand that way, I don't see our numbers getting huge.
Exponentially different, right?
Right. But they, now there's they're doing four tags again, 8 tags in the northern herd, the Clam
So there
Lake
is
herd.
that many. I guess that's surprising. I didn't know there was that many getting, per se, divvied out.
Yeah, and 4 in the Jackson County this year.
Okay.
So truthfully, I think there was 20, basically 26,000 people that put in for the tag last year, and 4 people got drawn.
Wow.
Yeah. So and. I'll tell you how this has changed my scope of friends and how they put in. I put in always just because I wanted to see the elk, in that Jackson County. I wanted to support it. So I put my $10 in, knowing that
Absolutely.
7 of the dollars went in to the elk habitat.
True conservation.
Yeah. I had no, so like when they called me, it was kind of funny. I was down. I shoot a lot of competitive shotgun. We were down in Georgia. And I kept getting this call from Hayward. And finally I was like, well, I thought it might be to do with real estate. So I'm like, I better call this guy back. So I call this number, and he's like, well, he introduced himself, and he said he was the elk biologist for the northern herd of elk. He said, I just wanted to let you know you drew a tag. And you sit there and, the concept of it, like, I did what?
You probably thought a buddy was calling and giving you shit or something.
Yeah. Well, well, his exact words, do you have time to talk about it? I'm like, nah, not really. I'm shooting shotgun, maybe I can call you back. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, do you mean a tag to hunt the elk? And he's like, yeah. Well, I ended up talking to him for 2 hours.
I was going to say, I'll make time.
Yeah. I'm like, we'll forget about the other stuff. But it was not a concept that had even run through my mind.
Right.
I threw my $10 in when I bought my license and never thought another thing about it.
Sure.
But it's funny now talking to my friends, that like this year came up, time to put your $10 in. Well, they were all deciding if they had time to hunt or like, what days they were going to take off. I'm like, dude, you're not drawn.
Right.
Put your $10 in.
Statistically speaking.
Yeah. So it was kind of funny that way how that changed. But, that was one of the things that drawing that tag, I look at, and it was good for my scope of people that I'm around, right?
Sure.
They actually saw somebody or knew somebody they drew. At first, I really didn't tell anybody that I drew the tag except for my really close friends, and I'm like, don't tell nobody. But as times went on, I let people know, because I think it's a good thing that people know that there's actually people do
this
draw
can happen,
this.
right?
Yeah. So it was kind of neat. And so then you're like, where do I start? So I got back from that trip, and I've been up that way. My grandfather owned land up in the Spooner area, which would be a little ways from there. But I've definitely been up in that country before, but never thinking about, like, where do I find elk? So one Sunday afternoon, it was like late June. My wife, we loaded up, and I was like, let's go up there and just check it out, So we drove up there, and I had the elk map, and I had talked to a couple guys by then. I started driving around. I'm like, holy mackerel, am I in trouble? Like it is flat. It's not like the mountains.
Right.
There's no fields. And you're seeing elk crossing signs in the ditches, but you're not seeing elk.
Where's the elk?
Yeah. I'm like, and it's big. It's a big area.
Huge.
Yeah. And I wasn't quite sure what to do.
Little overwhelming, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was. And I started doing my homework. I met up with a gentleman that had drawn a tag up there and was successful a couple years. And he showed me some areas on the map. And, man, I started putting feet on the ground. And I found these little areas where they had made meadows.
And is it mostly public? I mean, is that mostly national or state land or something?
Yep. There's two distinct areas up there. There's the Schwamigan National Forest, and then there's the Flambeau State Forest, which is on the southern edge of that.
Okay.
The federal forest, this is just my perception. I feel like they have, like, the biologists don't get to do what they want on the federal grounds. It all has to be approved and all that kind of stuff. So there isn't a lot of, like, clear cutting or habitat work being done in the federal forest.
Whatever it is, it is.
Yeah, there's people that like old growth trees and stuff, right? Then you had the state forest area where the state biologist has, not necessarily free reign, but they can do projects to increase habitat for the animals.
They're at least attempting to enhance the habitat.
Yeah. And that's where I chose to hunt. I found elk in all the areas. I mean, I had over 20 days on the ground where, all of the skills that I had learned in my previous.
Yeah, you're putting them to test.
Yeah, I was. I was like, how am I, and my perception is I switched to hunting with a longbow, traditional equipment, like 10 years ago to increase the challenge. So I'm like, well.
Just to make it even more hard. Yeah.
Truthfully, that's why. Yep. Because I feel like if I'm having a hard time as I get older, like, if I'm going to harvest it, I got to know I earned it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I put in feeling, I'm like, how am I going to get within I can't even see an animal. Like, how am I going to make this work, And finding, habitat that was right, why elk are moving from, you think about all the ways we hunt elk out west, you know, the rut, right? That's when I like to be out there. They're bugling, they're callable. Yep. You find.
Well, it's a 900-pound turkey, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So my hunt didn't start until October 14th.
Okay.
So that was going to be post-rut. Yep. I've never hunted post-rut. I didn't know how the elk were going to act. One of the things I found out in Wisconsin too is that people drive around with their bugles and their cow calls,
sure.
and they call at them like all fall, right? So the idea that I'm going to be able to call and stuff,
right?
I'm like, that's not happening. And I'm like, what does a elk do post rut? You know, like I'm not sure if they re-bachelor group up. I had to learn all this stuff because I'd only ever hunted them in September.
Sure.
So it was interesting to see what they were going to do. Another thing that I hadn't planned on was bear season is huge up there.
Oh, yeah.
And the amount of guys that I ran into running dogs, running bear baits, I mean, they were everywhere.
Not exactly conducive to sneaking around elk hunting, yeah.
No. The one thing that was great is once I told them, they would be standoffish when you'd first see them. Then I'd be like, hey, I got an elk tag. You know, have you seen any elk? You know,
yeah.
Man, there was guys that would drive me to different spots. They had seen them, tell me about their experiences. So the hunter cooperation was awesome.
Yeah.
But that being said, they were pushing around the elk too
Absolutely,
bad.
yeah.
You know, a pack of dogs running through the woods. The elk weren't staying there, you know. And then I learned that come October, the woods changes. Bear season ends.
Oh, yeah.
Grouse season starts.
Oh, boy.
And it had been a long time since I'd been up that area in the fall, but what I didn't realize is people that vet from Kentucky I met, there was people from probably 30 different states I ran into in big groups that were up there camping and and grouse hunting. And so now I guess
we kind of take it for granted. You
know
what I mean? Like, a good rough grouse. I mean, you're either in Canada or Wisconsin, northern Minnesota. I mean, it's not like they're everywhere.
Yeah, and you think about grouse. I mean, there's big contingents of guys that were traveling up there. I had no idea that they would. I mean, I ran into camps that were like from Pennsylvania and Ohio and stuff that they all had these high fluting dogs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the garb and they were walking through and there's a lot of grouse up there.
Sure.
They were doing well, but again, I'm like, they're pushing the elk everywhere. So I went into one spot. I had found one bull that was a nice bull. You know, for up there, it was like a 310 bull.
Well, what was your expectation size-wise? Because I guess I don't even know up there. I mean, if you kill a 300-inch bull, that's
a big one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Just from what I saw up there, that was the biggest bull I laid eyes on. I think the ones that were harvested, like the year prior to that, was the very first one ever harvested with a bow in Wisconsin, a compound bow. And that was, I think it was a 7x6 that maybe scored 260.
Okay.
So they're not, at this point, that first genetics that were up there were not great. Now, the genetics they introduced are going to be fantastic in years to come. But my expectations, to be honest with you, with a longbow, like my idea of the hunt has changed.
Sure.
Right. A branch antler bull was going to get an arrow.
Yeah.
If I could get that close to an animal, and boy, as October rolled around, I really had my doubts because the whole idea with bow hunting is you either, that time of the year, I was going to have to pattern them. They were going to have to be the same spot, come back and forth, and I was going to
slip in and try to kill one, where he's sleeping.
Yeah, and they'd have to sleep in the same spot basically to find him in that forest, and none of that was happening. I literally would see a bull, in some cows or stuff in a certain area. The very next day, they would be 4 miles away. That same group.
Crazy.
And for no reason. It wasn't like
they're just doing elk things, right?
Yeah. And, I guess we could kind of condense the story a little bit, but I spent I spent 3 days up there the weekend prior to the hunt, went home for 2 days, and then went back up there on the Wednesday prior to the Saturday opener. And I just, through scouting and learning animals, I just kept open to what I was going to have to do. I never was able to make a solid plan. Like, this is, we can kill them here. This is what they're doing. Yeah. But I did find one spot where they, more than not, like I probably 4 or 5 different times I seen different elk cross this road, and I knew to the west of there about a mile was some agriculture fields that they were going to eat in. And I could have hunted them agriculture fields, but they weren't coming out there regularly. But I could see this trail. And there's no, I hate to say this about a DNR, but there's no deer up there.
Sure.
You know, I saw elk every time I went up north, and I saw maybe 5 deer.
Which is sad.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
really sad. Yeah.
yeah.
And so I knew that it was not a deer trail. It was an elk trail. And I'd seen the elk, different bulls and stuff cross this spot, but without, Saturday morning, opening morning came about, and I kind of took my bow in my mouth call and walked a couple of different spots where I had seen elk, but they weren't there. And the idea of calling them, I just didn't have a game plan. But at noon, my uncle was up there helping me with this hunt, and at noon we talked about it, and I was like, if you can go, I was going to send him one way and I had another friend up there I was going to send another way to help try to find elk.
Absolutely.
And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put up that tree stand where they're crossing this road, and I'm just going to sit there. It's
Be patient.
Needle in a haystack. I mean, there's no reason they got to cross this road. It's just I've seen them do it, and so we get set up on that 15 yards, wind's right, whatever. So I'm sitting in there. I'm thinking I'm playing euchre on my phone.
Of course you are.
Thinking I'm kind of wasting my time here, but I gotta say I'm hunting at least once on opening day. And I remember looking up and seeing a yellowish object, like 80 yards in front of me in the woods. I'm like, that's an odd color in the woods, and I'm staring at it. Of course, being old, looking at a phone and then looking up, my vision took a while to adjust there.
Sure.
And I realized that's the color of an elk.
Look, this is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have an elk tag in my pocket, and I see an elk from a tree stand. This is pretty cool. As it got a little closer, I see that it was a spike bull.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, all right. So then it has to run through your mind. It's a legal bull. I could shoot it. I've got a stick. And bamboo arrows.
Literally, yeah.
And bamboo arrows I made from scratch. I mean, I just take raw shoots of bamboo and I make my arrow. And I'm like, I could kill that with this. And is that what I want to do? I'm like, I can't do it. I'm going to let this thing walk by, and so as it's getting closer, I mean, it literally came 15 yards to the side of me.
So you're right on the trail.
Yeah. And when he got there, I look up again, and there's 2 more yellow dots. I'm like, oh, this is beast. What? So I'm staring. When I trad hunt anymore, I don't have binoculars. I don't have rangefinder.
Sure.
I mean, I'm wearing plaid. There's no reason to have it because I'm not effective.
Totally get it.
So I watch as it come, and I see it's a branch antler bull. So now I'm getting excited. I stand up. I'm like, it's
gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And as it got closer, it had turned. I see the bull had turned down fronts. The fronts came out and turned down.
Really?
Yeah. And I had recognized that bull. I'd spent enough time in the area where I knew the bull.
So you'd seen him.
Yeah. Yep. And I knew he was the second best bull in the area. He wasn't the herd bull, but he was the second best bull, and he was hanging with 2 spikes.
That's awesome.
But he was 4 miles south of where we were in an area that was not allowed for me to hunt the day before. Yeah, he was off the elk zone, that I was allowed to hunt.
Sure.
Because I called on that. They were off the elk zone. Several elk were. And I was like calling, can I hunt outside the elk zone? They're like, no,
not happening.
No. So I'm here. It is. The real world's hitting. I'm having this elk come. So I'm stand up. Man, I get ready. He's making his way slowly, but he's coming on that trail. Wind's perfect. So I'm wrapped around there. Well, in the meantime, that spike bull had slid by me. What I was 30 yards off a dirt road.
Yep.
Like a gravel road was 30 yards behind me. So they would cross this gravel road. They had to go through another section, 160 acres, and then on the other side of that was some agriculture pasture. And I knew that's where they were. That's why I was there.
You knew where they were going to end up, right?
Yeah. So as this bull gets closer, the trail kind of came at me and then went around to my left side. He was at me, quarter to me, and behind a tree, and he's got to take like 3-4 more steps. And I'm like, my adrenaline's flowing. I'm ready. Well, that spike bullet made it to the road, and I hear a car coming.
Oh no!
This truck comes, and I look out of the corner of my eye. I can see it's a white truck, and to this day, I would love to know what they saw. But this white truck comes, and that spike bull's on the road. Well, they stop. I can hear them roll down the window. You know, I can hear them. Daddy, there's an elk. You know, look at that one. Oh, there's another one. Well, they seen the one that was in front of me. So they're there talking. I could tell they're taking pictures. I could hear the radio playing. I could hear everything, and I'm like, I can't believe this. You know,
your heart had to just be sinking.
And you know, fat guy in a tree 30 yards away. How could you not see me? You know, that plaid must have been blending in real well. Yeah. But it was. They stayed there for, you know, I mean, real time, probably 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, you know, and then the truck rolls up and slowly pulls away. Well, as it pulls away, that spike bull turns and runs back up the trail to that 5x5. So now they're facing each other 15 yards in front of me, kind of chewing their cud. And the woods goes completely quiet again. But mind you, I'm standing, you know, like this, ready to go. Well, we were on elk time. They just stood there. They had nowhere to be, nowhere to do. You know,
not
nothing,
a worry in the world.
No. And so they stood there probably, you know, 15 minutes, another or better. You know, I'm at the point where, like,
come on.
Yeah. We got to do something here. Finally, for whatever reason, that spike bull turned back around, and he started walking back to the road. You know, that's their food, right? And this 5x5, he didn't come exactly where I wanted to, but he took 2 steps and he turned broadside. And the one thing that car being there, I look in hindsight, like reflecting on the hunt, that whole time period was probably a half hour, right, that I had him inside of 15 yards. My heart rate, you know, your adrenaline is way up there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as time went on, the hunt mode came on, right? So I calmed back down, and then my friends and I have always talked to guys from Northeast Iowa, you know, Lee Herman.
Oh, yeah.
The ability to kill, right? Mm-hmm. The ability to function in that moment.
Keep your shit together.
Yeah. That bull took a couple steps out, and I saw a spot, and I'm like, I can hit that, you know. One thing about trad archery that I love about it is that it's a learned skill, right? It's all instinct.
It's all instinct. Yes.
I'm not using gap. I'm not using the point of my arrow. I'm not doing none of that. I'm just feeling the flight, and I was like, I can make that, you know. So you pull back, you hit your anchor spot. I thought about, like, just follow through with this. Just follow through to that spot. Kill that spot.
Yep.
And man, there the arrow hit all the way up to the fletch. And it took one bound, and you know, like the blood came out, right? I was like, it's done.
Yeah.
You know, I did it, and you know, with everything, you go through these emotions sitting there, but you're like, geez, that was, you know, I look back, that was a lot of work for the first day, first time sitting in a tree to get it done.
You made it look easy, Chris.
Yeah. That was the exact words my uncle gave me, you know, like when he's like, you know, people aren't going to believe this is very hard. You did it the first day. And I'm like, gosh, but it was a lot of work prior to it, you know. So it was, you know, and just some interesting facts on how that goes afterwards. So this bull is dead.
How far did he make it, Chris? I mean, you
less
mentioned
than 100.
So you had an easy pack out.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have to,
Well, to only tell you. So I had made friends with a couple of guys up there that were bear guides, you know, meeting them, right? And they were like, use an otter sled. And I'm like, use an otter sled? Yeah. He said, we just roll the bear on these otter sleds, and you get on them and you can pull them out.
Yeah.
Well, this elk basically just ran down this nice trail and tipped over. I mean, it took us a little bit to track him. I mean, by the time it was dark, by the time I got everybody gathered to go do this, but when we rolled him into this otter sled, and like 3 or 4 of us took turns pulling it, and he guts and all, didn't gut him, didn't do nothing. We pulled him all the way to the edge of the road. Well, then in the ditch, I backed my truck down into the ditch. We were able to pull the otter sled. So whole. We were able to bring that elk out there whole, because that was a concern of mine. You get one down.
Hell yeah.
You know, what are we going to do now?
Right.
You know? Well, because of the laws. The laws in Wisconsin are mind-numbing, to say the least. So you have to bring that animal out in 4 pieces, 4 total, of which the head and neck have to naturally be attached to one of the quarters.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm like,
Why in the world?
I talked to the biologist about, it's like the biologist, he can't change the law, right? It's something that was never an issue with whitetails.
Yeah.
So they've never thought about it. Well, it's an issue with elk.
Damn right it's an issue, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, how is that going to happen? You can't, there's no physical way to put that on your shoulder. Not me.
Right. Shit, not most guys in general.
Yeah, so I was concerned with how to get it out and that, because them laws are not. And one of the things I forgot to tell you is, like, beginning of September, you have a mandatory elk meeting. So the four of us that had tags go up there. They put on this whole presentation all day long. They cook you a nice lunch and stuff. But it's the federal game wardens, the state game wardens, like several of them, the biologists, the 2 elk biologists, the tribal biologist, the tribal warden up there, and they put on a whole presentation, but a lot of it was what you can and cannot do.
It makes sense.
Yeah, and where you can and cannot be. You were highly scrutinized.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. And that made me nervous. Not that I ever do anything illegal. I just don't necessarily want to have all these eyes on me,
Well, and sometimes you don't even know you're doing something wrong, and negligence isn't an excuse, so you better know.
Yeah. And that had happened to hunters up there already.
Sure.
In fact, one of the reasons I stayed out of the Chequamegon, the federal warden, so these roads, which are just 2 tracks, basically, they're numbered. They got number like 587 or 641 or whatever. They're numbered. Well, that's a road. Then so you have to abide by the so many feet from the center of a road on these 2 tracks. Well, these elk, what are they going to walk?
Right.
If are they going to walk through the swamp, or are they going to walk on this 2 track?
Damn right, they're going to walk on the 2 track.
Yeah. So I got the whole story, but the very first elk killed in Wisconsin was by a gentleman that the elk came down this 2 track, and he shot it and dropped it in the 2 track.
Sure.
It ended up, they took the elk and gave him a ticket. It was a named road. It had a number.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, I don't want to. And the other thing about the Chequamegon was grass, right? Grass is food for elk. Well, it's on them 2 tracks, and it's in the road ditches of the main roads.
Sure.
So like the first elk hunters that I had, talked to, or, kind of read about their hunts, they were basically going late, early morning, late night, finding the elk where they were eating in the road ditches, and then following them up into the timber.
Yeah.
Which was fine, but that's not what I wanted to do with a bow.
Sure.
So I stayed down in that Flambeau State Forest where there was food and where there was more natural movement and stuff. But
dude, that is so cool. I was just thinking too, it may have even, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but I know another gentleman, Lon Fia. He's from like the Hudson area.
Sure.
And he had a bull tag or an elk tag in Wisconsin. And I don't remember where he was hunting, but he was successful too with a compound. But
so the last year was the first guy ever to kill one with a bow, and he was down. And I feel really bad.
Maybe it's him.
Yeah, he's from down by Madison area.
No, Lon's from like I said, that Hudson area.
Then
so maybe
he didn't kill it with a bow then, because they made a
90.
Because they made a pretty big deal about
90% sure.
The guy last year was the very first one to kill one with a compound, and then I was.
Anyway, I didn't mean to.
No,
but I was just like, what are the odds that now I know 2 guys that have
John
taken bulls?
Tag. Yeah,
and I thought he killed his with a bow. I could be wrong, but I was pretty adamant he did.
Yeah, they kind of. Well, I'll tell you. Like when we were at this meeting, and they went around and they asked. Like what you planned on using, the wardens did, and I told them longbow. They outwardly laughed.
I literally, I bet they thought, good luck.
They thought I was joking. They laughed, and then they waited for me to respond more, and I'm like,
no, this is happening.
Yeah, and they were like, so they all migrated towards me, like when the lunch happened and stuff. Like, well, how are you gonna do this? You know, like. They didn't even have I'm like, I don't know. But
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's the fun, right?
Yeah.
To me, we can all, again, it's self-deciding of what the fun part of the hunt is.
Sure.
But for me, it was going to be the adventure. Like, how do I make this
Well,
happen?
mission accomplished. You got the adventure and a freezer full of meat.
Yeah, and it's been awesome meat.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
My favorite venison for sure.
Yeah.
Wild elk.
Yeah. I did. I'm glad I got to participate. There was some moments in there like, why me? Like I've had a lot of opportunities to hunt elk. I remember having a conversation with my wife, and I hope my son doesn't listen to this, but about giving the tag to him.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, you're not doing that. And my son likes to hunt, but he's not. I think he has a lot of other hunting he can do. I mean, he's, my wife's like, this is a lifetime opportunity.
Absolutely.
And he's got a lifetime of hunting if he wants to do it. And I took it to heart, but it also made me like, am I being selfish, keeping this tag? But I then maybe that's why I wanted to do it with the
trad bow.
Yeah. That and like I said, the progression as a hunter, we all go through it, right?
Yep.
And where it's led me to is like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the hardest way. Like you
did it, dude. Check.
Yeah. It's like even my arrows, I take pride in them. I found a place in Japan that makes raw bamboo shafts, for arrows, just raw. So I had to get them in big bulk. I'd sort through them and spine them and weigh them, and then all the.
How true are they, Chris? I mean, like when you're spinning one of them, I can't imagine perfect's even a thing.
No, it's not. And the hardest thing for me was going. I used to shoot competitive compound stuff. And going from that, where precision was everything, to realizing that shooting a long bow at 20, 25 yards and in isn't perfection.
No.
So like if I had 0.001 arrows and shooting out my longbow, and I had 0.20 right out of with the long, I don't know, as an archer I could tell the difference.
Sure.
But I definitely have arrows when you shoot them. Like I would make a big deal about spining and stuff, consistency, and that's what I looked for. And the arrows, they would vary 60 grains in weight, and I could still hit the same spot out to 20, 25. So it's
insane.
Yeah. It really has been different for me. Like
whole learning.
Yes.
That's because when I think of archery, especially, and I guess I would say it for hunting as much as the target side, but I feel like the target side is when you really scrutinize.
Yes.
Your arrow's perfectly straight, it's perfectly weighted, it's perfectly spined, yada yada yada. And if you take that and apply it in the hunting world, you feel like you have pinpoint accuracy, right?
Yeah.
So to hear you even say like it's 60 grains different, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But then again, at 15, 20 yards, or whatever you deem your effective range with a longbow, does it really matter? Like maybe it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really about. I don't even know how to explain it, but the arrows don't have to be perfect. But you shoot them and you find the ones that are most consistent.
Sure.
I'll have one that I've done everything to, weigh it, spine it, get it the best I can. And with that bamboo, I actually can straighten them, use my thumb, and
sure.
Like
an old school aluminum.
Yeah, so I go through them and I do that, straighten the nodes and spin them, and
Sure.
I try to get them as true as I can. But it is an imperfection. But
I'm almost dumb to this conversation because I have I'm oblivious to it, right? Like you go buy your .001 perfection arrows,
Yeah.
and that's next level, Chris. I give you a lot of credit, man.
It's been jumping into a new world, and it's a neat community.
I'm
the
sure.
trad guy is. But I made that jump 10 years ago. I'll tell you where it came from. I was shooting competitively, and you know how much I've traveled the world to shoot, and it's just got to be a struggle that, I shot an antelope, and I shot an antelope over 100 yards.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I was like, I didn't have to hunt for that. That was a shot,
Right.
And I started shooting pretty heavily competitive. Started traveling the SA circuit and stuff, and my family has essential tremors, so I start shaking. So like my son, who was small at the time, he's like, Dad, you stop shaking. I'm like, I'm not shaking. Well, they started videotaping me, and my back end was doing this.
No kidding.
Yeah. And I'm like, my whole body was doing that. So I went and talked to that doctor friend of mine again. And he's like, well, I can give you some stuff that'll help you with that. And I forgot what it's called, but I have some. And my dad started taking the pills because he shakes really bad as well. And it's a beta blocker. It's actually, I do believe, an illegal substance to be shoot using competitive. And I'm like, geez, now to enjoy hunting, I'm having to take meds. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So there were some gentlemen that were shooting at the archery club with their trad bow, and I was like, man, them guys are having a good time. I got one of them stick bows at home, so I kept this a whirl. Yeah, I kept telling them I'm going to bring it one. So I did, and I shot the very first deer I ever shot, very first two with a recurve back in the right around 1980, and I just fell in love with that arrow flight. It's the first time I started doing it with them guys, and I was like, this is fun.
Well, like old Fred Bear says, the magical flight of the arrow.
It was,
there's something to that.
Yeah, it captivated me, and it's been a struggle with friends and stuff. I they're worried that I'm not going to be successful, and I'm not worried that I'm not going to be. I have been.
You're doing it for other reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've been lucky enough now. I've killed moose, bear, elk, antelope. I killed a 170-inch buck on my place.
It's crazy.
Yeah, with the trad stuff, and it just has extra meaning to me.
For sure, and it should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's top of the heap. It just is.
Yeah,
and outside of like spearing an animal, it's as close to that as you're going to get.
I'm not doing
Indian stuff. Like.
Yeah, and I guess I like that connection to the ancestry, or like to what it.
Well, it's primal.
Yes, yeah, I do like. So a good friend of mine is very good. He's an artist, Jeff Frederick. He does big turkey hunter, but his hobby is flint napping.
Flint napping.
Making arrowheads.
Yep.
So a few years ago, I saw that, and I was like, so he's really into finding arrowheads and stuff like that too. So we, in our area, up by Cataract, north of Sparta, there was several mines for the Native American population. It's a quartzite rock, but well known throughout the country for arrowheads. They would trade it all over. He napped me an arrowhead out of that, and I killed a buck with that a few years ago. Stone point wood arrow.
That's badass.
And a long bow. Yeah, that was. I just wanted to do it. It wasn't for anybody else. It wasn't, like to brag, or it was just I want to see if I can do that.
And you did it.
Yeah.
Dude, you got some crazy cool stories. Like I said, dude, we're going out west or something. You got to come with because I want to hear more of this. But Chris, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I know we're a hunting / land / real estate based podcast, and I'd feel pretty remiss to not say this. But I mean, dude, with your background, I got to think every client of yours falls in love with this. But if somebody's interested in buying or selling land in Wisconsin, I mean, what areas do you service? I mean, give us just a little preview of that side of your life.
So I, I guess with that life experience, right? Colton, and Josh in that group of guys is really into the land, and it was something I wanted to do in retirement. I to share my experiences. Building whitetail. I've owned my own land since I've been 22 years old.
Yeah.
So like what, country living means to me, owning your land, making it, so in that La Crosse, the driftless area, I love that area. Never left it. When I came down to it, my wife was from La Crosse.
It don't get much better. I mean,
No. The only place that we ever contemplated moving to was Waukon, right here in Northeast Iowa. Yeah, that would be. But our jobs kept us in Wisconsin, and we've stayed there. And now I've got an opportunity to share the knowledge of the area, and I put the same passion into land and selling land and knowing land. And houses and stuff that I
Chris,
do with
I think
my archery.
It's in your blood, man. Like you're just that guy. If you're going to do something, you're doing it next level, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope people do. Like I said, it's tough for me to do podcasts like this. Or not podcasts, but like talking, because I mean, I want people to feel comfortable with me, and I never want to be that guy that overemphasizes my accomplishments
Sure.
versus yours. I got some life experiences there, and
Fun to talk about, dude.
Yeah.
And by the way, you did a great job. I mean, great job telling these stories.
Oh, I appreciate
Like I said,
it.
I could sit here all day.
Yeah. I don't have much practice telling them. I've got a lot of these stories.
Dude, you need to write a book is what you should do.
Yeah.
And I just want a signed copy. That's it.
I think about, so I was older when I had my son. He graduated from high school this year, and I'm going to be 55 in a couple days.
Sure.
And, part of me is like, maybe I should, because I'll probably never know my grandkids. You know what I'm saying? Maybe.
Hard to say.
Hard to say.
I mean, you're only 55, dude, so it's not like you got a foot in the grave or anything.
No, not that. But I'm hoping my son doesn't get going too soon in life. But
practice makes perfect. He did just graduate.
Yeah. So yeah.
But I mean, all joking aside, you should write a book because I mean, these are stories that if you're not telling them, they're not going to be told.
Right.
And regardless of how old you are when you have grandkids or whatever, it'd be pretty badass for your grandkids to be like, this is my grandpa was a badass.
Wow. And I never meant to be. It's all just been like, oh, what's the next adventure? And, I get a lot of questions like, what, well, geez, like killing a turkey can't be exciting. I remember that one. After you killed an elephant, how can you go turkey?
Yeah.
Dude, I am so jacked for the opening day of turkey season when it comes around, I just, and I'll tell you what, next level, doing that with a trad bow.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, what's the hardest animal I've ever killed or harvested? And without a doubt, I will tell you it is a turkey.
Yeah, I swear they're so dumb they're smart.
And just getting an arrow into them means nothing.
Nothing.
If you got to get that arrow in that right spot. So
I've got to the point where I only head shoot them because I'm either missing or it's lights out.
Yeah.
And that's with a compound.
Yeah. I guess I've done it. I mean, so now like this year, I tell you one of the kind of cool accomplishments. I don't know if I hope it's not pressure that my son feels this way, but he won't use a compound for anything.
He wants to trad everything.
Yeah.
Nice.
So this year, like I was like, man, you haven't been shooting a lot. I played hockey, and I was like, you haven't been shooting a lot. You sure you want? He's like, I've been shooting every day, Dad, a little bit. I'm like, okay, we'll go out and do this, and I let him do the whole thing, and that bird came in, and man, he shot it with his longbow, and
nice.
He makes his own cedar arrows. He doesn't want to use my bamboo, and it was life moment, right? I mean, that was pretty cool
memory,
to watch him do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, good for him.
Yeah. He harvested with a longbow. He was 12, and he harvested his first buck with a longbow at 12.
So your kid's a badass too.
He is when he wants to be. Yeah, when he wants to be. Yeah.
Oh, funny. Well, I know we got long-winded, Chris. I didn't mean to keep you this long, to be real honest, but dude, kudos on a cool life. I mean, I get you're only halfway down the road, but we're going out west, man. We're going for a truck ride because I want these stories in my brain.
Man, I can't tell you. I put in for the Montana points. I got a couple already.
Pile them up, brother. we got a hell of a hookup out there.
Yeah, any year that I could go, I would love to. That's been a great part of this adventure, has been who I've got to share hunting camps with. I've gotten pretty picky, about it, but boy, it's been about the people that you're with on these trips, and like going solo, that's no fun.
Right.
It's not,
at this point, I'm more about don't get me wrong. I love chasing elks. Like, if I had one animal to chase the rest of my life, it would be elk.
Yeah.
Hence the fact I wore my special shirt for
Absolutely,
you. But I'm kind of in agreement. Like, I'm not saying I don't want to keep progressing and get a bigger one or, do the next extreme hunt. Like, I'll never say that, honestly. But the people that you're around in an elk camp make the elk camp.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I'm picky. You know what I mean? At this point, I'm going to pick my battles too. But that atmosphere and the camaraderie and the friendships that come from chasing these animals, I don't know that there's – the only thing I can relate it to is playing like competitive sports.
Yeah.
Playing football and those are your teammates, and, boy, you'd run through a brick wall for them. At this point in my life, I don't have that. I have hunting. And that's replaced it for me. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, it's great. Like, you go out, do your hunt. Like, you do your hunt.
Yep.
But to come back and hear what everybody else got to experience that day is awesome.
Yep.
You know, to see it through their eyes, and you know, you can only connect with people,
Right.
like people.
Well, dude,
that
even
way.
your broker, Josh Gens, was in camp with us last year, you know, and Josh had some unfortunate luck, right? I mean, he hit one high, and it's hard. Like, I almost felt, I mean, I did feel bad for Josh, but it hurt to hear him, and I know how competitive he is.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like I felt like I was right there with him, and obviously I wasn't. But, I mean, when he told that story, it was weird. It was gut-wrenching for him, and I felt like it was gut-wrenching for me because I know, you know, when you have the opportunity, boy, you know, they're golden opportunities. But
well, and to have other people in camp that can feel what you're feeling and help you through it makes a big difference, right?
Well, we gave him a lot of shit is what we did, Chris. But no,
that's part of that, too.
That's right. It's all part of the game. But
yeah.
Chris, can't thank you enough.
Yeah, I sure appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we appreciate you coming in and sharing the story and stories, I should say.
Yeah.
But looking forward to more of this, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah. I've been listening to a lot of the podcasts you guys have done, and it's next level. You guys are. I really enjoy podcasts. It's for an older guy to learn that podcast world took a while, but boy, now I don't listen to anything else, and the quality and the topics that you guys have been putting out have been awesome.
Well, we appreciate you saying that, and truthfully for the listeners, I mean, this is one of the platforms we're really trying to grow for UC Hunting Properties and featuring our agents and the stories that come with a group of very diverse real estate agents. So you fit the mold perfect, Chris.
Well, and it's been great for me to hear like who coworkers basically are out there and their experiences they have and people you can call on in different areas of the country and what they can do. And it's, you know, and I'm learning like the real estate game. I'm 3 years into this. I'm learning every day, but that's been a part of life all the way around and what I learn to be able to convey it and help the people that you're working with, you know, and I love this community. It's been great.
I'm right there with you, brother, being an outsider and coming in, like, I feel like we got the best network in the entire country. Yeah. You know, and I'd argue that with anybody. But people, like it, share it, and hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep doing them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, can't wait.
All right, brother. Take care.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
you, Chris.
you very much. Appreciate it.